Shalimar Steinberg, and today we're talking about how to dimension objects. So for this drawing, I've already done some work ahead. I've created my objects, I've created a couple of layers, so I have an object line layer, I have a dimension line layer, and I have a text layer for a text that's not dimension-based. So right now I'm on my dimension layer because I'm getting ready to start my dimensions. So you can see that here there is what's called the quick dimension. This will create the most common dimensions in your object by clicking on it, but it doesn't give you very fine control. There is also a drop-down menu here of the different kinds of dimensions that you want to do. But if you're doing more than one dimension at a time, the easiest way is to go over here to the Annotate window, because now I have the drop-down for all my different dimensions, but I also have access to the other buttons. This does a quick dimension. This allows me to do the continuous dimensions, which are side by side. Or from the drop-down, I can pick the baseline dimensions, which overlay on top of each other in order to provide further information. I can also use the Update button, which is going to apply any dimension style changes that I make. And I can use the Adjust Spacing between linear dimensions or angular dimensions if they're not spacing out right once I've created them, so to make it equal so that they're lined up really nicely. And I can mess with my dimension jog lines if I need to. So there's just finer control on this screen. Okay, so I'm going to start by doing continuous dimensioning for these bumps on the top here, and baseline dimensioning for those same ones over here. So I want my drop down to be the linear dimension, and I'm going to start by specifying the first corner on this dimension, and the second corner on that same dimension. And then I want to drag it out and make sure that it's at least 0.4 out, which I can do by typing 0.4. So it does it 0.4 away from the object. And one thing that's important to note is that this one's going to be higher, so I'll probably do 0.4 away from that one and then drag the other ones up to make them match. But now I can hit continuous, and it's going to continue from that same one, and then I can do the dimension there, and the dimension for this one, and for this one. Now I would need to mess with the spacing a little bit. Continuous is a lot better when they're all the same height, so you'll see now how that would work if I do baseline instead. So I'm going to end the command, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do the same linear dimension. I'm going to do the one on this one, and I'll do my 0.4 away, and it draws it. And then I'm going to do the drop down here and say baseline. And it's now going to go back to that start, and I can do this one. And it should be dragging up, but for some reason it's not. It's driving me crazy with that. And then I can do this one, and this one. But I'm going to need to drag them up above, because for some reason they didn't go up above where they're supposed to. So I'll just drag it up here. This one will go above that. And now I've got all my dimensions up off of the object that they're showing very clearly. So they're not in the object lines. You can definitely tell that they're dimensions, and they're all easily readable. Within this, because I have the overall dimension, I can pick any one of the interior dimensions and not show it as long as I have the others, because I would be able to extrapolate that measurement. So I could leave out this one, or I could leave out this one. I would want to leave out one of them so it's not redundantly dimensioned, basically. Now, I have to do dimensions which are going to show how high these breaks are as well. So that's where I'm going to dimension them, and I'm going to take off the continuous dimensions that I did on here, just so that they're not in the way. And so for this one, what I would do is I would do a linear dimension, and I would do this and this piece, but I'm going to drag it out to the side here before I click, because I don't want it to be laying over this object line. Then I'm going to do the same dimension here, and this one And then I could do the third one down to the bottom here if I needed to. And then I would move these other ones over and do them on the other side so that they're not too cluttered on this side. So I would go in here and show this one, but I would drag it over again there. And again for this one. Okay. And if we're doing an orthographic view where I have multiple views of the same drawing, I want to make sure that I'm not dimensioning the same thing on different views. So if I dimension, for example, the width of this here, I'm not going to dimension that on the top view in the same area. I'm going to dimension the side objects instead, or things like that. So some of the other dimensions that we need to look at, we can do the aligned dimension for this angle right here. So I'm going to go this length to this length and pull it out, and I get that aligned dimension length. I'm going to do a radius for the arc here, and remember I don't want to dimension inside the object, so I'm going to pull it out, and I want to make sure that it's angled between 15 and 75 degrees so that it doesn't look straight on. And that's dimensioning the radius to there. Then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do radius over on this one with this arc, because I also want to show you arc length. So if I go to arc length right here, on this one I can click on this arc, and it's going to allow me to show the circumference of that section of the arc, how long that actual measurement there is. Then I can do the diameter of this interior circle here by clicking on the circle, and I'm going to drag it all the way off of the object, and I'm going to use my tracking to get them lined up so that they're the same distance off of the object, because it looks neater again. And you can see that has the diameter signal in front of it. And then, so I've done linear, aligned. Oh, I'm going to do an angular one for the inside of this corner. And you can see that it's showing me the 90 degrees. I could also do the outside of that same one and drag it out here, and it would show me that same angle, just off of the object, which would be more appropriate. This is also where I can add in the center mark or center lines to my circles, and where I can control jogging as far as how I want the jogs on my leaders to look. Alright, so for the assignment for this project, you're going to have this blank drawing, which has two of the same object, and you're going to go into AutoCAD and look at the example. So you're going to download this blank to get those two objects, and then you're going to look at this example, and you're going to make all of these same measurements onto the drawing. Alright.